Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast, No More Secrets. As always, I'm your niece, Katie Albrecht.
And I'm your aunt, Mary Albrecht. And we have a guest on today. Her name is Tina. Please say hello.
Hi, everybody.
And Tina is here to talk about her daughter, whose life ended far too soon, but whose impact has lasted and lasted and lasted. Her name, Isabella Nelson Kranz.
That's right.
Yeah, so Tina is going to share her life story and how she continues to help people even when she's not on this earth. So, why don't you tell us a little about Isa?
Isabella's full name, like you said, Isabella Nelson Kranz. She loved her initials,
Ink.
INK.
I love
Yeah,
it.
as she grew older, she was an artist and she signed everything ink, which was really very cool. I actually have a tattoo on my arm
I
that
was going to
says
say, she would
ink.
have been destined to be a tattoo artist, I
Yeah,
think.
absolutely. And actually, she would like draw on her friends.
Oh,
Like
nice.
with they have like tattoo markers that you can use that are
Oh,
really
okay.
cool. Yeah, she was incredibly talented. Um, and that middle name Nelson is actually after my mother. That was my mom's maiden name. So, and it just so happened that my mom and Issa were so incredibly close. I didn't know that obviously when I named her with that middle name, but it was just, yeah, very
It's almost like
uncanny.
a sign that they were going to be close, kind of.
Absolutely, for
Yeah.
sure. So yeah, we called her Issa, and she was as unique as her name. She was just the cutest baby ever. The cutest little fattest baby you've ever seen. She was just adorable and well adjusted and happy and just came into the world like just felt like all the planets aligned. She was definitely not a planned pregnancy, but my entire family and extended family, like everyone was so excited and just adored her.
Is she your oldest?
She is,
Okay.
yeah, she's my first baby, and yeah, she just was a happy, talented, smart, athletic kid. Just everybody loved her. She had such an infectious personality and she loved to make people laugh. That
Well,
was a huge part of who she was.
When we first met you, you used the words unique and quirky.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She was. She just, um, yeah, she would do anything to make people laugh or make people smile, especially if she knew you were not having a good day. She was very famous for throwing her body on the ground or falling down, like to make someone laugh. She used to, just say really funny things that sometimes would get her in trouble in class. But she also drew a lot of funny pictures. She was always doodling in her school notebooks, and she would draw pictures for other kids in her class. At one point, she had like a whole list, and actually, it was a few pages long of kids in her class that wanted her to draw certain pictures. So she actually had to
She had
ask.
like a business
She
almost.
did. She had to ask like one of her friends to kind of be her secretary and be like, "Can you keep track of like the name of the person, what they want drawn, and then if I've completed it or not?" So yeah,
Good
this was like in grade
Lord.
school.
Brilliant.
So
Great
yeah, and
school.
she just
Prodigy, honestly.
yeah, yeah. The actually one of the coolest things happened. I was telling you a week and a half ago, we had to put our donkey down. He
Yeah.
was very old. He had a beautiful, incredible life. But the person who had Julio before us, um, it was probably about 17 years ago that she came to own Julio. And um, she shared a picture with me of one of her young students who drew a picture of Julio for her. Actually painted a picture, and it was really cute. She sent me the picture. This is Julio, and of course I looked at it, and on the bottom was ink.
Oh.
She was like, "Issa drew this for me 17 years, or painted it for me 17 years ago when I got Julio." So that was just kind of a cool story.
Wow.
That she
It's
she had
very,
a
like, serendipitous almost
it really
that it
absolutely.
came around like that, yeah.
Yeah. She had a group of friends, that she rode horses with. She was just a horse lover, like I am. And as her friends, like, got to own their own horses, she would paint like a beautiful picture for them. of their horse, and it was just
Like
the sweetest
watercolor
thing.
or paint or
Like acrylic paint. You know,
Really?
she started off drawing when she was really young.
Okay.
She decided she wanted to learn how to draw horses, and it was really cute because my husband and her would sit down with these how to draw a horse book for hours, and just, you know, it started off with like these two circles, and then you like add a head and a tail and legs, and it's so cute to see her artwork as it evolved over time. And I mean, at 14 and 15 years old, like, it was absolutely magical what she could
I think kids start to
create.
have that like
Yeah.
aptitude that early already. You can tell if they're going to be a good artist and stuff.
Absolutely. And she had like the desire, and the motivation to do it. Like, she
Yeah.
just would sit for hours, and then she just drew constantly. Um, since her passing, we have gone through her, a lot of her school notebooks. You know, I wanted to see, you know, what she was writing in there, and just to see her handwriting is really precious to me. Almost every page, like even like notes she's taking in biology class or history class, like there's horses and little unicorns, and like she was just always, always, always doodling.
I can relate to that. I
So,
was like that as a kid
yeah.
too. My whole pages were just covered in doodles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was probably not the most productive school wise, but
Yeah.
I like what we were talking about beforehand. How
Yeah.
Didn't it help you focus?
in theory.
Was Isa ever diagnosed ADD or ADHD?
No, as a matter of fact, Issa thought she was ADHD.
Okay.
She was convinced she was, and she was trying to convince me, and I said, you know what? There's no way you would be getting such good grades. You know, like, her teachers always said she was chatty in school. She was just chatty.
Yeah.
And very friendly, but amazingly, it was within 2 weeks before she died. We had found a psychiatrist. We were going in to talk to her about going off of her antidepressant medication because Issa was feeling really good. And Issa's like, had been talking to me about ADHD for quite a while. And I said, listen, we're going to talk to the doctor about this. And we went in for her appointment, and I said, you know, okay. We had talked about going off the antidepressant. The doctor said, let's wait, you know, until summer, so you don't have to worry about
The
any
dark.
side effects about, you know,
Oh,
of coming off the
okay.
antidepressant. And I asked the doctor, I said, so can you just spontaneously get ADHD when you're 15 years old? And the doctor laughed, and I was like, right? She goes, no, but if you're very intelligent, you can get away with having ADHD for a very long time and not be diagnosed.
I can see
Oh.
that.
So she gave us a questionnaire, and I'll never forget that day. We were driving home, and Issa was reading it as I drove home, and I was like, holy cow, yeah, she probably had ADHD.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah. So she had diagnosed herself, and I was so adamant against it. I was like, you know, she had a couple of friends who were, and I thought she just wanted to, you know, be like her friends. And-
Sure.
That's
Yeah.
kind of a thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool to
Exactly.
be depressed now, you know, like they
Yeah,
want to be
yeah.
like each other. And so,
Oh, what kind of
yeah.
meds are you on, man?
Yeah.
Right? Like
I'm
the
such a
ADHD
loser.
meds evidently are like a thing.
They were a big
so,
one. Yeah.
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 Okay.
So anyway, so yeah,
Yeah.
Issa was
So, and so I wrote these notes that was she 7 or 8 years old when she started riding horses? Is that
Yes.
what this is? Okay.
absolutely
With your mom?
no, it was with me.
Oh, with mom meaning her
With
mom.
me, yeah.
Not your
so
mom.
I just never imagined. I grew up loving horses, and just, I mean, that was my obsession. Not just my passion, my obsession.
Okay.
And I was lucky enough that when I was 10 years old, my parents bought me a horse, a little pinto pony, and she was just the love of my life. And so I grew up riding through middle school and high school. And I just thought, you know, when I was having kids, I'm like, there's no way my kids are going to love horses. Like, you know what I mean? They're going to be chess players or something that I don't know anything
Chess
about.
players, very specific.
Because I'm like, I still at this age
You're
don't
not
know
gonna
how
like
to play
horses, you're
chess.
gonna like chess.
I know, like, there's something random that I just don't know anything about. And lo and behold, you know, Issa's, you know, 4 or 5 years old, and
But does
She
she like
just-
chess though? I need to know this. Did she?
I don't think she liked chess. You know what? I think
was
she played a
concerned for a
little bit.
second.
My son does play chess though. I think he's pretty good at it, but
Does he
it's
ride horses
hilarious.
too, though?
He has. He
Okay.
has. So he did dabble in it a little bit, but yeah, Issa was pretty obsessive too. Like at 4 years old, it was like she wanted to learn how to draw, but she wanted to learn how to draw horses. So at that point, I was like, maybe she'll love horses too. And yeah, it
Did you
was.
have horses
Takes
yourself
after her mom.
as a mom,
No.
or did you go elsewhere to ride
No.
at the time?
So at that point, I had been out of horses for probably 20 years.
Okay,
And
Bernie. This is such a it's a goofy show.
I love it. Animals everywhere. That's how I'm the most
We just got a
comfortable,
whole
being
zoo, honestly.
surrounded by animals.
Well, and you are.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that.
Absolutely.
But anyway,
Yeah.
Bernie.
So yeah, I had been out of horses for, over 20 years. I had to sell my horse when I went to college, and just had been riding off and on here and there, like nothing really formal. So when I had Isa, and those years until she was 7, 8 years old, I just, again, here and there I would ride, but nothing really formal. And then when she decided she wanted to, get into it, she was showing, such a strong attraction to horses and being able to ride. So she got into riding, and within that first year of her riding, I got back into it too. So we would both take lessons, not together. She would take lessons with kids her age, and then I was taking lessons too because it had been so long I had been out of it. And so we kind of grew together. It was really fun to kind of share that love, and it was so incredible because there was a group of girls right around her age that they kind of grew up together riding, and all of their moms, like there was quite a few of us mothers who either had just started riding at an older age or had been out of it for a long time. So it was really a very, very cool community of people, kind of mother-daughter thing.
Yeah,
that,
very
we were able
special.
to share.
Yeah.
It was incredibly special to share that with her and share that with this group.
And for it to be like your childhood interest too, I think it's gotta feel
Yeah.
incredible.
What a dream.
I could not imagine. Like
Yeah.
it was such a dream. So after, I think it was within the first couple of years that Isa had started riding, I had been back into it, and I think our trainer kind of, like, she knew that it would be really nice for us to have a little family horse, that we could share, but we were definitely not in the market for it, financially and otherwise. Like, it just wasn't in the cards for us. But lo and behold, the kids, went back to school in the fall, and I just had some free time. I was a substitute teacher. I always wanted to be home with the kids in case they were sick or, had a day off. I was a stay-at-home mom. So I started riding this horse that my trainer said, this horse just needs some time. He's off the racetrack, and he just needs to be, exercised, walk, trot. He's still kind of learning how to be, a normal horse and not a race horse. So, yeah, I started riding him, and oh man, the first time I sat on him, I was like, it was literally what you would imagine, like sliding into like a really amazing sports car that just fits you like a glove. And I was like, what in the heck are we doing here? Like, I just fell so in love with this horse. His name was Clarence. And
I love that name.
so not a family friendly horse, like, the kind of horse that was so lovely and actually very quiet and appropriate to be around with Isa, but not for like a very beginner rider. So it was just hilarious that we ended up getting Clarence. There was a lady that really wanted to own him, but she didn't have enough time to put into him, but she had the money. And we did not have the money, but I had the time. So we kind of joined together, and
Nice.
yeah, we were able to kind of jointly own Clarence for the first couple of years. And Isa was so funny. She had no interest in this gorgeous, fabulous horse off the racetrack. Really just didn't have chemistry with him.
How big of a horse?
I mean, he's a good, decent size,
Oh.
but
She was by then 9 or so, or
yeah,
8, or...
she was, right about 8 or 9. Yeah, probably 9 years old. And she was tall, you know what I mean? And I'm kind of a short person, so it wasn't that he was too
So
big.
it wasn't that she was intimidated then.
No, she was not intimidated at all. Like, I was actually more intimidated by him. But she just didn't have good chemistry. She rode him, and she's like, he's okay. And I'm like, he's fabulous. Like, what? And it just so happened that, in the next, it was right before her 10th birthday that she got on a school horse named Ted, this beautiful little Palomino. and she rode him, and they actually didn't have a great ride. She was kind of frustrated when she, after class, and she got off, and she was just like, I don't know if I like that horse. Like, he was just, kind of stubborn and, a little inexperienced. And she rode him one more time in a lesson, and that was it. She became completely obsessed with this horse. And after school, like, I would say, "Hey, how was your day?" And she'd be like, "Ted." I'm like, "Isa, like, how was school?" "Ted." What? Like, she just was like, "Oh, look at that pillow. It looks like the color of Ted." And it was really funny. My parents had recently gone through a divorce, but they did come together in this one. And that Christmas, they actually bought Ted for Isa.
Oh,
So
and she was 10?
she was just over 10 years old. Yeah, it's
Oh,
amazing.
and then where did Ted
Yeah.
live?
So Ted and Clarence were both at the same barn. We were boarding them there.
Okay.
And it was really funny because the purchasing of a horse is definitely a big undertaking, but it's actually the maintaining of that horse. So paying to board them at a facility and have that
hear that
person
they're
feed
expensive
them.
to
Oh my
maintain.
gosh, it was crazy. So yeah, my parents are just like, they were like, "We want to buy Ted for Isa," and we're like, "That's great, but." You know what I mean? That's a lot of money, and we're already paying
Right.
half of that for Clarence. And they said, "No, no, no, we're going to take care of it till Isa's 18. Don't worry." And so, yeah,
Oh,
she
wow.
opened up a Christmas card, Christmas Eve, and it said, "Congratulations, you do now own Ted." And like, she
Oh,
just looked
that's
around
nice.
like, "What? No." And I was crying. I was like, "You, Ted is yours." And she was like, "Oh my gosh." It was just the most magical Christmas. I'm just so grateful for that forever to my parents because like that was her dream.
I love the way you talk about her because it feels like she's still here.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
all these memories. I feel like I'm right there with you because it's just like
Yeah.
so vivid and everything.
Yeah.
And
I still
it's-
feel like she's right here.
Absolutely she is.
Yeah. I have days where I just, can't get off the floor because I just miss her physically so much. But oh my gosh, like I still feel her so strongly, especially because we still have Ted.
That's what I was going to ask. You
Oh,
still
yeah.
have Ted?
How long do
Everybody
they live
asks.
for, horses?
Horses can live like, close to 30 if they're well
Okay.
taken care of. Ted's got some physical issues that he, of course, started dealing with right after we purchased him. He was kind of a young horse, and it was really cute back to when Isa first came to own him. Again, he was kind of younger, and the circle of Isa's friends, were starting to get their own horses. And over like the next year or two, Isa and Ted went through some challenges, as new horse owners do. The horses sometimes will test their boundaries, and Isa had gotten bitten, she had gotten kicked, she had gotten bucked off a few times. And, I finally said after quite a few months, I'm like, maybe we jumped the gun on this one. Like, maybe there's a better horse out there for you at 10 years old to learn on and to grow with. And she said, "Absolutely not. This is Ted. Like, this is Ted. This is my horse. Like, I'll do anything that I have to do. I don't care, if my friends are jumping higher fences or, going to more horse shows. Like, I'll do whatever it takes to bring Ted along. At
It sounds
his
like
own
she had the
pace.
same connection with Ted that you had
Yeah.
with Clarence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that
That's-
was
yeah.
Is it like a dog? Like how
Yes.
a dog has its person.
Yes.
So a horse also has its
Yeah.
own person. Okay.
It really is because, like, the first time I rode Ted, I was like, "Oh, like, what?" Like, I did not have chemistry with him at all. Like,
Yeah.
I was kind of bouncing around, and he just didn't feel smooth to me. And even like walking him on the ground, I think he was kind of like, it's that chemistry. Whereas in me and Clarence, it was like all kind of hearts and stars when I would, be with him. And Isa didn't feel that with Clarence, but yet,
But could you ride
Yeah.
together? You on Clarence and
oh,
her on
absolutely.
Ted? So that's
We
when you did a
that
lot of
quite a bit.
that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And I'm so grateful because my mom passed away in December of 2010 from cancer, and she had left us some money. And I was able to buy our own horse trailer, which was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. I had never even driven a horse trailer, so I kind of got up to speed. And Isa and I, that next summer, were able to go and just the two of us take our horses out on the trails. I just never imagined we would ever do that. And we would sometimes get lost out there for a couple hours and just talk and walk. And I am eternally grateful for those moments that we shared.
Oh,
Because,
and
of course, never, ever imagining that that would be our last summer
that was the
together.
last summer that you got the trailer?
Hmm.
Because your mom died in 2011?
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. So my mom died in end of 2010. So then it must have been, I must have actually gotten the trailer the year after.
Because it
And then it
takes
was
a
the,
while for
exact,
the,
like,
yeah,
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 for
yeah,
us to get the money, we had to go through, the
yeah.
will and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm sorry. It was the summer of 2012 that we had the trailer and we were able to, trailer out and go on some trails, off property
You
and
know, a lot of mother daughters
yeah,
at that age don't have those kind of
yeah,
close experiences.
yeah,
It's almost like you got this lifetime in this
yes,
short period of time,
yeah,
just so rich and so
yeah,
real and
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
moving and passionate and
yeah,
beautiful and just
absolutely.
it's a
And
way to look
yeah.
at it, but it's nice you had it. Be
And it
nice.
wasn't all a fairy tale. I mean, she was a wild child.
And she
She
was
was
also a middle schooler, and that's just a confusing time,
right.
right?
Like, so yeah, toward the end of middle school is like when she kind of started to struggle a little bit. My parents had gotten a divorce. We all lived on the same property, like this beautiful tree farm. That the kids really grew up living there next to my mom and dad had a house next door, and then my grandmother lived in a little guest house on our property, and it was just 6 years of just bliss.
And kind of like a compound and
It
all
was.
that
That's what we called it.
support and
Yep.
yeah.
A compound. Like, I remember there was a night, we lost power. It was the middle of winter. My husband was traveling. Um, the kids were sick, and like my dad, it was like a horrible winter storm. My dad literally just drove, his car like over to our house because I couldn't even get the garage door open because the electricity was out. I think one of the kids was throwing up, and we just jumped in his car, and he just drove across the driveway, like back to his house, because somehow they had electricity. And it was just those years of kind of, just growing up all together
And
and
that was
sharing so
part of
much.
what rocked her foundation, right? When your
Yeah,
parents got a messy divorce, they left.
yeah,
Then your
yeah,
mom got sick.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, we all moved off the property. It was just too hard for me to see someone else move into this beautiful home my parents had built.
Oh,
So yeah, everybody moved away from each other. Not far. My mom moved to Lake Geneva. We stayed in Spring Grove, and my grandmother moved into McHenry. But still, just having that,
just
that
yeah.
different lifestyle.
You think that started her
I think that
depression?
that probably brought it out. I'm of the belief that I think there's a genetic component probably to some of this. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people in my family, including myself, have struggled with anxiety and depression, um, maybe some other mental illnesses, but of course, in my generation growing up, like most things were not diagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
My
Mm-hmm.
sister was diagnosed with clinical depression at one point. But that was kind of just really starting to come come out of
Into the
the
mainstream.
darkness. Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
because nobody had really
Still
heard
really
about
new.
that. Yeah, it was very, very new.
Yeah.
So yeah, when Isa started to struggle, and it was not apparent, absolutely not. I mean, she was such a happy kid 98% of the time, and the other like 2% were like, she's a teenager, man, or a preteen or a teenager. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um nothing seemed that out of the ordinary.
How did
But
you know that she needed to be on antidepressants?
so that's a great question. So one of her friend's mothers happened to find a note in her daughter's room, and it said something about cutting. And so she
That's
called me,
right. Okay.
and
Okay.
again, this was a girl that Issa had been riding horses with. I knew the mom from the barn and from school, so I was so grateful that she was able to call, because that must have been a really difficult phone call to make, to say, I found this note, and I think your daughter may be cutting herself, or self harming. And I just was like so shocked. I'm like, I know my daughter better than anyone. How could
Yeah.
I not know this?
Yeah.
And so I confronted Isa, and I think she was ashamed and embarrassed. And
Yeah.
it was hard not to be, and I'm embarrassed to say it, it was hard not to be angry, because I'm like, why would you do that to your body? Like, you have this beautiful, healthy, incredible body. Like, why would you do that to yourself? I didn't understand the connection between like a depression and self-harm, or anxiety and self-harm. So thankfully, growing up, we had had some experience with therapists. I had seen my parents and my sister, kind of struggle with that. So I said, well, that's the direction we're going to go. So we got a therapist, and very, very nice gal, like right in McHenry, a little bit older, and she saw Isa for several months and kind of came around after a few months and just said, you know what, I think Isa's in a better place. She's got some good coping skills, and I think now you can kind of, instead of coming every week, you can come around maybe when she needs it.
And she was still on antidepressants at that point, or
No, we had not started
oh, you hadn't
medication
started?
at that
Okay.
point. Yeah. So it was probably a year or so later. So it was in eighth grade is when things kind of started to get a little, like I realized she was self-harming again. And we brought her in for like an evaluation, and they said, you know what, she doesn't need to be hospitalized, but we want her in this day program. So it's like a self-harm program at Alexian
Alexian
Brothers.
Brothers, okay.
Yeah. And they were the ones that said, they had a psychiatrist diagnose her. They said, clinical depression, anxiety. So they started her on medication. She was in a 3-week program. So for 3 weeks, she was out of school. The school would send her homework to do during the day while she was in this program. And she was also learning coping skills with a lot of other young people who were struggling with the same sorts of things.
What year was this?
She was in eighth grade.
Yeah.
So this was like spring of her eighth grade year.
Yeah. Okay. But what year?
Oh, I'm sorry.
In
So
time,
this
I
would
guess.
have been 2011.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
spring
I'm
of
trying to
2011. Yeah.
Picture the timeline after your mom died.
Right.
And everything.
So right, my mom had died the end of 2010.
Okay. So this is shortly afterwards.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty shortly after. And yeah, so we had this 3-week program, and it was, I mean, we felt really reassured because she had several therapists looking at her, during this time, and 1 to 2 psychiatrists. And, everyone said, like, she's engaging in self-harm. This is no way, shape, or form is this like suicidal tendencies. Because I thought, with cutting of the arms, I'm like, it's terrifying as a parent to
Yeah.
hear about that and to see marks on your kid's arms. It's like, is this a precursor? Is this? And they said, absolutely not. This is not. She does not show any kind of, suicide ideology. She does not showing any tendencies toward that, which we were so relieved. So they had some programs for the parents as well for us to come in and kind of learn a little bit of what the kids were learning about the different coping skills and things like that. While Isa had started the antidepressant, she was having a really difficult time sleeping. I think the antidepressant may have played a role in that.
Yeah.
So I think we tried 2 or 3 different medications. In those first couple of months. Once they released us from the program after 3 weeks, they were like, you have to have a therapist and a psychiatrist to be released out of this group. So we found like this, really, really well-known psychiatrist who, he was the one that kind of shifted around her medications a little bit. We found a new therapist, a little bit younger, a little bit, I don't know, edgier. Isa said, like, I think I want to try somebody a little bit, younger. And we really liked this gal both together. So she was in treatment, seeing the psychiatrist, at least once a month, seeing the therapist every single week. And things, seemed to be going along pretty well. So yeah, that was, what did
That
I
was
say?
the end of her 8th grade
Yeah.
year then?
Yeah.
Okay.
So going to school was a huge transition. Going back to school after 3 weeks off, there were so many rumors that she had attempted suicide, that, she was crazy. Like, so we worked with the school very closely, and the social worker at school was amazing. She really helped Isa and just said, well, she tried to really help Isa and say, like, at any point in the day, if you need to come into my office. She had like one of those little Zen gardens, with like the sand that you can like rake, like just a little mini Zen garden, and just a really nice, welcoming office for her if she just needed to kind of take a break. Again, there were just a lot of rumors, a lot of kids not being kind.
Not
Issa was a
kind.
little bit of a
Right.
magnet for kids that were not kind. And I think it was because she was a little quirky and she was so goofy and silly. I don't know why kids.
They probably thought she could take it.
Yeah. And yeah, she was pretty stoic.
And
She didn't, she didn't let on that it bothered her, usually until she got home. So,
Okay, yeah.
you know,
I
she
think
had
kids
kids
also make fun of what they don't understand.
Yeah.
Usually.
Yeah. But like kids on the bus that would like dump water. These older kids dumped water on her one day. Like she got off the bus crying. They were, I think in 8th grade. Issa was like in 7th grade. And it was like, why would they do like, why? Like, why would you do that to someone? And I know it's a tough time in your lives. Everybody's, trying to figure themselves out, and it's so hurtful to be the parent of a
Basically
young person that
bullied,
has
yeah.
gotten bullied by older kids or has been experienced unkindness. And of course, I understand most of us have been unkind at different times in our lives, but yeah, it seemed like Issa did experience that a little bit more often than like my son, for instance.
Yeah.
And again, I think Issa did put herself out there more. She was kind of
Yeah.
goofy and silly, and
Yeah.
for some reason, I think kind of made her it made her a target
Yeah.
for more of that.
And
And
they
again,
pro-
that
and
she
they-
didn't really let on that it bothered her
Exactly.
too.
And again, they
Yeah.
probably thought, she can take it. She's got this
Yeah.
great sense of humor. She's quirky. Let's
Yeah.
mess with her. She's fun.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, kind of thing. I don't know. But
Yeah. So
anyway, then how was the summer before freshman year?
it was really good. Like she seemed
That's
to
when
be
you did all that riding and
yeah,
got the
yeah,
trailer?
she yeah, so yeah, things were going really well. Like she had been on the medication for a while. Like she was feeling pretty darn good. She had just joined cheerleading in 8th grade after never experiencing it in her entire life. She gets on the team, like all these girls have been cheering since they were 5 years old, and yeah, I'm gonna try that. She was one to try everything. I mean, she had been in gymnastics, tennis, soccer, basketball. Like she would try anything. And I used to tell her, I'm like, you have no fear. And even with the horses, like I had so much more horse experience than her, but she just had no fear. And I would just like kind of rode her coattails a little bit. Um, and she was so funny. She's like, Mom, I do have fear. I have a lot of fears. I said, well, I don't ever see it. Like you just go. You know what I mean? You just do things. And the cheerleading thing was another thing. I mean, she was very busy, had a very full life with riding her horse and going to school. And she's like, I want to try cheerleading. So she jumped into that, did some tumbling with that and really, really liked it. So, yeah, that summer before freshman year, she had a really good group of friends. These girls, had been together for a few years. They were super tight, super loyal to each other. They were all hilarious. They had a great time. And I could see probably starting like that, maybe that summer, that I could see that some of her friends were struggling. Not even that Issa shared with me as much, but like I said, hey, is so and so okay, doing okay? Like I just can see a difference in their personality. And she's like, yeah, they're doing okay. Um, and fast forward a few months, and it was my daughter that died. It was my daughter that took her life. We were in such shock again because we were so seemingly proactive.
Oh my
We had the
gosh.
therapist, we had the
Yeah.
psychiatrist, we were on antidepressants. The school, in the 8th grade had really worked with us, going into freshman year in high school. It just seemed to be kind of a fresh start, like a new start.
Yeah.
Issa was a good student. She's really solid. She's smart as heck, and she got in a little bit of trouble in the first 2 months of school. She was cheering for her first football game in front of the school, and her girlfriend had thought it was a good idea to smoke a little bit of pot before the game, and I did not make the connection there, and neither, unfortunately, did anyone, that the connection there between anxiety and self-medicating.
That's huge.
Right.
Still. Yeah.
And I'm amazed that no one else made that connection, but like for me, I'm so disappointed in myself that I didn't know, because I mean I really tried to research and I tried to stay on top of everything, and we really were trying so hard to do everything right, but we did not make that connection. It just seemed like a acting out kind of a,
Well,
you know,
sure.
like why would you do it? You're such a smart kid. Like why
Yeah, right.
on earth would you ever?
And sometimes kids just get curious, and like, how
Yeah.
can you totally correlate it to self-medication, you know?
And the other thing too that I've learned since then is that our brains don't fully develop until we're 25 years old.
At least.
Yeah. So
I'm not
males-
the same as my 24-year-old self.
can you imagine? Like at 15 years old, like, yeah, you can be smart as all get out, but you may not fully comprehend.
You don't have the judgment.
consequence. Yeah, the
Your frontal
consequences of your
cortex,
action.
yeah.
Exactly.
And boys are usually several
later.
years past
Yeah.
girls. They even
Yeah.
say up to 29
26,
now
27.
for the
Really?
Yeah, for that frontal lobe to
Isn't that
develop.
amazing? Yeah.
It
It's
thought I'd
makes
amazing.
a
throw that
lot
in
of sense, but that's a different story.
But isn't it
so
incredible
she
to
she was
think?
smart, but she didn't have judgment. She didn't have
Right.
the just
still
the overall
growing.
awareness of
Yeah. Right.
She's still growing mentally,
So,
emotionally,
yeah.
physically, everything.
and
Yeah.
I've the friend did it too, right? So
Her and her girlfriend, they both have anxiety. They're both a little nervous. They thought, we're gonna smoke a little pot before we go out there. And
Did she get caught then? Is that what
Yes.
happened?
Yeah. so they were both suspended for 10 days.
Oh, okay.
So this is, I think it was like October of 2012. So you're a freshman in high school. You're just learning all the online idiosyncrasies of like the program and the school. And I mean, my husband and I are both college educated, and had a hard time helping her figure out, all these online things. And now she's suspended for 10 days. And, the school said, we will allow you to do your homework, but like that is 10 days of like unexcused absence, and 10 days of not attending classes, and not,
Oh.
listening to the lectures, and not, directly getting any kind of instruction. So, we allowed her to talk with her, friends who were in the same classes and try to get the notes. Again, these are all freshmen. They're
Yeah.
freshman kids that are learning how to take notes in these classes. So, she worked hard. She worked her butt off. And so did we, trying to keep up with everything that she was missing, and, trying to get her back on the cheer team. She had been thrown off the cheer team, and we said, Isa, is this something you want to continue? Is this really important to you? Yes. She's like, I would really like to be back on the cheer team. And the cheer coaches were like, it's just not safe. We have kids, being thrown in the air. And we said, we understand that. We are going to be drug testing Isa every week on our own. And they said, that's, we can't ask you to do that. That's really not, that goes against her privacy or something like that. And we said, well,
Wow.
we are going to be doing that anyway. So, what can we possibly do? It's very important to us, for Isa to stay active, to stay engaged. You know what I mean? Like, she had struggled in 8th grade,
Yeah.
so I was very grateful that they allowed her back on the team. So once she had to get her grades back up, once her grades were back up, because of course when you come back after 10 days of suspension, you are failing all of your classes. So she worked her tail off to get her grades back up, not to what they were before by any means, but it took the teachers a little bit long to be grading everything as they're trying to keep up with the day-to-day work. So yeah, once her grades were back up, she was allowed back on the cheer team. We were drug testing her every week. And just as an aside, after she got in trouble at school, we had a mandatory evaluation at Rosecrans in McHenry, and they drug tested her within 2 days of her getting in trouble, and nothing showed up on the drug test. She drug tested clean.
So she
Still
just
not
smoked.
exactly sure what exactly she did smoke, because nothing showed up.
How did they find out then? They
Um,
smelled it, or did
no,
she have some on her? Or?
someone had overheard that she had smoked pot, and
Oh.
they let the
Maybe she didn't, though.
But she got tested and she was clean?
yeah.
2 days later?
Yeah.
What?
So we're not really sure. Yeah, it was very
What about the friend?
confusing. I don't remember, come to think of it.
Did the friend get suspended too?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Unfortunately, and the two of them were both questioned alone, like with a policeman, on school premises without the parents being present. It was, I, I will look back and say, you know what? I'll take responsibility for my child, whether she had the, marijuana or something that she thought was marijuana, like on the premises. I'll take responsibility for that. You know what I mean? Like that, these chain of events. But the way that it was handled is very disappointing to me as well. Having a policeman on the premises, interviewing my daughter,
In
having
front
the
of
At least like give them a warning. Like they deserve at least one chance to,
yeah,
recorrect or like correct it,
and I understand it's a no tolerance policy, and I totally get that.
Yeah.
But I think what, something is, if someone is being accused of something, like you need to wait until parents get there before you
Yeah.
question a child.
they didn't wait.
No, the Isa had been sitting in a room by herself, and she had been questioned by the police, and by the principal and the dean, and they were telling us that she would not say where she got the drugs or who she got the drugs from.
So she
So
was
it-
covering for like a friend or something?
It turned into, yeah, like this investigation. Like Isa was going to be, an informant, which, again, as parents, we are terrified. They are threatening that, they could expel her at this point because, there is indication that she had drugs on the premises, and we were trying to cooperate with the school and with the police, and it was
That seems illegal that they questioned
Yeah.
without a parent
Yeah.
around or an
Yeah.
adult of some sort. Well, I guess the
Yeah.
adult was the principal, but no, a parent, a legal
Yeah.
guardian.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, like we didn't really think of any of that at that point because we were terrified she was going to get expelled. And once you're expelled from a school, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to get into any other school. I know that they have these like, other schools for kids who've been expelled that I've heard kind of nightmare stories from.
Yes, me too. I've heard
So
of
it
those.
was terrifying as a,
Yeah.
as a parent. We were just like, can you please just cooperate with the police? Let's just, do whatever they say. Let's just go through these 10 days of suspension, and try to get your work done. And so, yeah, I mean, that was a lot of stress without a doubt, for sure.
And she was still on antidepressants
Yes.
and still coming off of that whole, crisis of becoming clinically depressed, going
Yeah.
on medication,
Yeah.
trying different medications, not sleeping,
Right.
which you mentioned is
Yeah.
a big factor in
Exactly.
suicide.
Exactly. So, yeah, for us, I mean, that was kind of, her struggle at home. I mean, literally, she was, again, she was a smart kid. She was a pretty darn easygoing kid. Her big struggle at home was the sleeping. She was really not able to sleep very well, to the point where I had never allowed a TV in their bedrooms before. But at this point, I did. I just, had a TV with just a DVD player you could watch, and her favorite show was Adventure Time. So I would let her watch her crazy little cartoon show. And I also bought her like coloring books, just to, she had sketch pads already, but I'm like, if you just want to color, you know what I mean? Until your mind gets tired enough
Right,
to go back
right.
to sleep, things like that. So, yeah. So after all of this, okay, like, this is at this point when, Isa had somehow been able to get her grades back up. They were at least C's, I think kind of B C's, which Isa was an AB student, across the board her whole life. But now she's B C's. She's back on the cheer team. She's riding her horse. We're kind of letting her have a little bit more freedom, with her friends again. We went to see the new psychiatrist that said she might have ADHD. It was like, okay, well, you know what? We may, you know what I mean, be working on another or a different diagnosis here. Um, and at that point, we had talked to the doctor about going off the medication, but she said, Issa, let's wait till summer, just give it another couple of months, and then we'll try going off. After Issa's death, her friends did tell us that she had gone off of her medication at some point.
Cold turkey, you think?
Yes. I was giving her medication like every morning since she started it. I had a little container. I would give her medication and a vitamin D capsule and probiotics and just things that I was hoping could kind of help boost her system and her mood and everything like that. And she never complained about taking it or never said she wasn't going to take it. So I just didn't have any reason to think that she wouldn't be taking it.
You didn't have to watch her swallow because you thought she's taking it.
Right.
She had been all the
you had
while.
to trust with her
Exactly.
and everything, yeah.
And then, she had asked me if she could go off of it, and I said, let's talk to the doctor. So I don't know how long she was off of it. I don't know when exactly she went off, but I think it was within a week or two of that last appointment, she took her life. And the autopsy actually showed that she had the normal amount of her antidepressant in her system. So she had gone back on it. So she had stopped at some point and then had gone back on long enough to it show up, in normal levels in her body. But the important part about that is, that, and I knew at this point, and I had explained this to Isa, that you can't stop an antidepressant suddenly. It's not good for your system.
Right.
You can actually, cause a lot of chaos, in your mood. It can lead to a suicidal episode.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if this played a part because, again, I don't know exactly when it was that she stopped her medication and when she started back up. That it could be a factor. I've thought about that.
Yeah.
That could be a factor in it. Kind of along with, the incredible stress she had gone through, the lack of sleeping, or the very erratic sleeping schedule.
And the finals, wasn't it the night
yeah.
before finals?
Yeah. So, yeah, it was kind of a stressful situation. Not only was it the night before finals, and she had kind of known, you've got to do well on these to get your regular A's and B grades. It came down to it, and my husband and myself both were like, you know what? At this point, you just do the best you can.
Yeah.
That's all you can do. You do the best you can, and you know what I mean? That's good enough.
Yeah.
Right.
We also were in the midst of purchasing a property that we could have our horses at home. So Isa and I had dreamt of that, having our horses right in our backyard. And we weren't even actively looking, but since moving off our property when we lived next door to my parents and my grandmother, that we had land that we thought, we could have the horses
Kind of create
there
another
someday.
compound. Yeah.
And then we moved off of that property and back into a neighborhood. And we said, you know what, the land will have to come later. It just so happened that this thing popped up on Realtor.com, and I saw this property and it was vacant, and we went to look at it, and it was just so perfect. I walked into the barn with Isa and I burst out crying, and I was like, this is so beautiful. Like, I can see our horses here, and like we hugged. And
How long before she
this
passed
was
that?
this was right around October, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, right about October that we found this house. And the house was just so cute, little 1970s tri-level. And the barn, they had built the barn, and it was like an 8-stall barn, like super cute. And Isa picked out the stall she wanted Ted to be in, and she had picked out her bedroom. And there were some things wrong with the house. So the night that she died, we were having our second inspection, and there were quite a few things, like major things wrong with the home that we needed to have a second inspection on. So that was kind of like, like this might not happen. Again, that is a stressor. But I would never say that like that is the reason that Isa would take her life, because there's never just one reason. It's kind of what I like to call a perfect storm.
Yeah.
But that absolutely could have added to it. You know what I mean? It was going back and forth. Are we going to move? Are we not going to move?
If you like went back, would you? I mean, do you think about that inspection and think like if you didn't go, would you have been there? Or like, has that ever? I mean, I don't.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
just
no, no.
curious
I
what
appreciate that. I totally appreciate that.
what went through your mind that night and afterwards and everything.
Yeah, so that night, Issa was upstairs studying for her final exams. So, like that night before we left, I had just come home from a day of substitute teaching. I was tired. I did call up to Issa when I got home because she had gotten home before me. And I just said, "Hey, buddy, you need any help up there, studying?" And her door was closed, but her voice was strong. And she was like, "Mom, I'm good." She's like, "You can help me when I start to study French." Because I took 4 years of French in high school and a semester in college. So I said, "All right, sounds good." So I do think about, had I walked up those stairs and opened her door and looked at her, would I have known? Like, could I have seen something that wasn't right? You know what I mean? Like, would I have had an idea that maybe I shouldn't leave? But even if I was home, I was downstairs. Like, our kitchen was on the first floor, and Issa was upstairs in her bedroom studying. My
Right.
son Henry was downstairs on the first floor, playing video games on his computer. So,
And it's not a bad thing to just trust your kids,
oh
Like
yeah,
that's all it was. Like you don't
yeah,
think about trust. It just happens, and
yeah.
that's why you wouldn't have thought anything different that night.
And at this point, I mean, so this is October, like the kind of the shit storm, like
Yeah.
we were on the upswing of it. You know what I mean? This is like the end of October. It actually might have, no, 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 yeah. So October was like kind of the shitstorm. November was kind of like, so we were on the upswing. Things were looking better. Issa was getting better grades. Like we had, the suspension had been, kind of in the past. So it was like there was, a lot of things that kind of built up to it, and then we had some,
Faith.
we were on an upswing.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
why. So
exactly.
you did go to.
So
is
yeah,
that- you
so
went
I
to
did
the
go.
ins-
Yeah, my
Your
husband
husband?
had gone to the inspection. The house is 5 minutes from where we where we were living. So my husband had gone, and I said I'm going to go over there for a little bit, just to see what's going on. And and we were there, and we were like, what? There's a lot of stuff going on, but we're going to do it. Like this is worth it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's a great little place, and so yeah, when I came home that night, thankfully my husband was, we had driven separate cars, but he was right behind me. And I walked in and asked Henry, I said, "Where's Isa? Has she been down yet?" And he was like, "Oh no, I didn't even, remember that she's home."
Didn't you say the house was dark too?
Yeah, I mean, the house was kind of dark. Again, Henry's on his computer, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so I flipped on the downstairs lights and was just walking up the stairs. And I said, "Isa, you better not be sleeping up here," because, she had trouble sleeping at night. So sometimes during the day, you know what I mean, she would like nod off. And that's when I discovered that I walked into her bedroom and she had taken her life. And just, it was nothing
Horrifying.
like I could ever have imagined.
How did she do it?
So she actually hung herself.
From
It was pretty apparent that she had probably researched something, I'm assuming on the internet. I think my husband actually said that he found something on the computer along those lines. And it took me quite a few seconds to realize what I was seeing, because I was looking at her bed that had her books all open. You know what I mean? Like there was papers and books all over her bed she had been studying. And when I saw Isa, I just, like when I realized, I just started screaming. And I just grabbed her, hoping that maybe she had just done it. You know what I mean? Like I was like, I had no idea, and I just was screaming. And my husband came up, and he got her down somehow, and we immediately started CPR, because she was warm. I just thought, maybe, I didn't know if, it was a few minutes or however long. I was very, very, very grateful that my son was not the one to find her. And so, yeah, my husband and myself were doing CPR. We had several dogs at the time who were all over the place. And my 13-year-old son was the one that had to call 911. He had to, rally the dogs and get them, into another room with the door closed. And I just remember when the paramedics finally came, they ushered me and Jimmy out the door, and we stood in the hallway with Henry. Just, you know, Henry was saying, like, she has to be okay. She has to be okay. And I just said, no matter what happens, we have to be okay.
Did they work on her for a long time?
What's that?
Did the paramedics work on her for a long time?
You know what? I could not tell you how long that happened, because it happened,
Yeah,
like,
you're in
everything
shock.
seems so fast. So somehow don't know how we ended up, like, downstairs on the first floor, and I remember watching them. Isa was on a stretcher, and they were carrying her down, the stairs, and there was a paramedic on top of her, like, doing chest compressions. And amazingly, we still keep in touch with that particular paramedic. A few years later, we ran into her, and she's an incredible woman, and we're just so grateful for her and all of the first responders that were there. They
That's
were amazing.
That is amazing that they were able to do that down the stairs and still hold the compression
Right?
speed
Like,
and everything. Like,
yeah.
that's hard.
And it was just like, thank God. Because when I think about that, it was like, I know that they did everything they could possibly do. Like, if there was any chance to get her back, like, they never gave up. And amazingly, one of the girls that Isa used to ride horses with, and she was friends with at school, her dad was I believe, a volunteer fireman, paramedic, and he heard on the radio what was happening and drove right over. So he was the one. We will forever be grateful to him. He came over and drove us to the hospital. I don't know how on earth we would have gotten there otherwise. Yeah, he got us safely to the hospital, where, they put us in a room and gave us, like, a few minutes, and then came in and said we never got a pulse back. We were never able, to get anything back. And just that
What a
absolute
surreal moment. Yeah.
disbelief and disconnect.
Yeah.
I remember seeing Isa for the first time, and I was looking at the nurses and saying, like, this is not happening.
When you saw her dead, you mean?
I was sitting there right next to Isa, and I looked at the nurses and I said, this is not happening. This is not happening. And they just were staring at me, like, I think they were kind of terrified. I had just kept saying that. I'm like, this is not happening. This is not happening. And, it almost felt like a movie, like
You're
that I was
watching
watching
from the outside.
You know what I
yeah.
mean? That you
Oh,
kind of
yes.
get, like, you get really engaged with. But yeah, it was like such a unbelievable, even thinking back, I'm like, I just was completely in disbelief. And I'm so grateful. My aunt lived 5 minutes away. This is my mom's youngest sister, who I'm very, very close with. And she somehow, on the way to the hospital, I was able to text her, and I was shaking so bad, and it just said, meet at hospital. And she had no idea what she was walking into. And I'm so grateful she was there, because she sat with me for a while my husband was able to go and sit with Henry. He didn't want to see his sister, and we didn't want him, to see that. And then she took Henry back home to her place, so that me and Jimmy could be with Isa for a while and kind of just try to understand, like, what had happened, and talk to the coroner, and talked about donor, that we couldn't donate organs, but that there were other things, that she could be a donor for.
Like her eyes.
Yep, her eyes, and bone, and ligaments, and skin.
Did she
So,
donate her eyes?
mhm.
Do you
Yeah.
know the person that she donated?
We
to?
don't know the person, but we do know there were two people. So, like, one person got one eye and one person, like, got the other. So they did, like, let us know that those were donated and received. So
What
that
color?
was
Wow.
She had like beautiful, like like hazel eyes.
like yours.
Yeah.
So, she couldn't donate organs because of the meds?
No, I believe because she had died quite some time, like too much time had
Ah,
passed.
got it. Okay.
Um,
All right.
or and maybe I don't know, maybe if she had gotten, I just kept imagining like as we didn't have success with the CPR, and as I saw them doing it, like I thought like maybe in the ambulance they could give her like that shot of adrenaline or
Yeah.
whatever they, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
like when you
Yeah.
see in movies like whatever they do, like I don't know if like maybe you know what I mean, like they gave her something, but yeah.
They said they couldn't do the organs.
Right, right. um and I knew Issa would want to give whatever they they could use.
What was that date?
That was December 18th, 2012. So 12/18/12.
Oh,
And she
Yeah.
was 15?
She was just had turned 15 in September.
how was the grief recovery like since then?
So yeah, it has been just over 10 years, which is I say every time I say that I'm like I cannot believe that.
Yeah.
I remember I mean, I don't remember a lot from those first few weeks.
Ugh.
I remember our house being very filled with people, which I am grateful for that. As much as I don't know how much I interacted with anyone, I really leaned very heavily on my two girlfriends, particularly my best friend Guge. um,
Mm.
I just remember her stroking my hair and just holding my hand and being there. And I remembered like just like holding on to her. And oh my God, how terrifying that must have been for her. But just these people coming over and bringing food and just being there and, doing our laundry and cleaning up the house. And it was, yeah, just kind of, again, one of those like kind of foggy, you know,
Yeah.
days and weeks. Like, I don't really know how we made it through. Like, I remember thinking, like, at some point my heart's gonna just stop beating. I used to tell Issa and Henry when they were little, I said, you have to be very careful with yourselves, because I don't think I could live if something ever happened to you guys. Like my heart would just stop beating, and
Wow.
I genuinely believed that. And I thought after Issa died that there's no possible way that my heart is going to keep beating. It can't.
It's just broken.
But
Yeah.
but how do I leave my son? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
how do I not fight to still live? You know what I mean? Because my son is here. You know what I mean? Like it was just I did think more times than I can ever count how grateful I was that my mother was there in heaven
That she
waiting for Isa.
Oh.
I was like, thank you.
you
Thank
probably gave her
God.
the biggest hug in the
Like
world,
seriously, and I'm like, if my daughter can't be with me, then she is the only other person I could ever imagine feeling good that Issa was with is her grandma.
How about Jimmy? What was he doing those first few weeks, and how
Yeah,
was he
so
doing? And
yeah, great question because Jimmy and I, we realized pretty quickly we grieve very, very differently. I literally was non-functional. I just didn't know up from down. I don't really remember conversations
Pretty
much
much
that I've
survival
had.
mode.
Yeah, like literally, it was all I could do to just drink water. People kept telling me to drink water. I wasn't hungry. I just nothing. It was like nothing registered. I just felt like I had been turned upside down and inside out. Jimmy kind of goes into like work mode. Like there's people
Stay
here.
busy, yeah.
Like there's okay, like he, you know what I mean? He wants to coordinate things. Okay, we've got to go to the funeral home. Thankfully, one of another man who Jimmy had coached Little League football with, some by some miracle, like he just jumped right in. Um, his name is Randy. We call him Rev. Um, and he just kept showing up every day. And he was like, I'll drive you wherever you need to go. I'll take you whatever. So he drove us to the funeral home to like make arrangements. Like he helped. And this group of men that Jimmy coached Little League football with, they were the ones that brought over tons of food, and they brought over cases of water and, big white folding tables. And I don't know how they knew what to do,
Yeah.
but somehow, like, they were the ones, we knew we didn't want to have a traditional, I knew that Issa would not have wanted a traditional funeral. She was not traditional in any
Right.
way. And I think I just knew in my heart, I'm like, I can't do that to her. I don't want to have, a casket where all of her friends are walking past. Like,
Uh,
so we did have a very, very small immediate family. My brother and my father both were pleading with me, please, I need to see her because I will never believe that she's not here if I don't see it. So we had a very, very small immediate family, like little gathering. And then Issa was cremated and we had a life celebration. And again, these football coaches with their wives, like literally planned the entire thing. And it was a beautiful celebration. We had a big slideshow of pictures of Isa from all ages of her life. She was so adorable as a kid and just beautiful as she grew.
it's really amazing to hear
Yeah.
people showing up for others in like the worst moments of their lives. And I think that's kind of the beauty of like the communities around you
Yeah.
and everything. Like you had all these friends and family helping you. You had all of Issa's friends and coaches and all that stuff like helping.
Yeah.
Just because like they wanted to help. They weren't expecting anything in return, and I think that's beautiful.
I've never experienced anything like that. Like the love, and it was, I think, shocking too because growing up in the 70s and 80s, you don't hear about suicides. And, even saying the word growing up, it was kind of hushed tones and like people were not open about it. So like thinking back, I'm so surprised that people weren't afraid and just
And kind
like,
of
we're
like,
not going
ooh,
over it.
weird
You know what I mean? Like
family,
just
yeah.
almost more just being terrified. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. What do you say? Like what? And people just came.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, so I think we got home from the hospital like 2:30 in the morning because we went to my aunt's then. And like my brother came and his wife, my dad, and his girlfriend came to my aunt's house where me and Henry and Jimmy were. So by the time we got home to our own home, it was like 2:30 in the morning. And then the donor company actually called us at like 4:30 in the morning to talk about, Isa donating tissue and bone and her eyes and things like that. They were so lovely, by the way. Oh my gosh. It was like jarring to get a phone call at 4:30, but we weren't really sleeping anyway. And then I think it was about 8 o'clock in the morning when the doorbell rang. And we were like, who on earth? Like, who could that possibly be? Oh, that was right after we got an automated call from the high school saying that one of the students at school, Isabella Kranz, had died. Yeah,
Wow.
we got that automated phone
What?
call about 7:30 in the morning.
Come on.
Yeah.
Could have
So,
prepared that a little bit differently.
yeah,
I
that
feel like.
right. That was
Uh,
yeah. And then I think it was right about 7:45 or 8 o'clock. It was shortly after that that the doorbell rang, and we went down, and it was one of the coaches that Jimmy had coached with, and it just so happened he has triplets who are Issa's age, and he has a son who is Henry's age. And I just remember Jimmy opening the door, and I just heard him sobbing, and they just hugged, and it was like, I don't know, it was like one of those moments of like, this is real, like this really happened. You know what I mean? Like, and we've had a million of those things. You know what I mean? Like that kind of all clumped together over the years to really kind of help you realize like that this happened. And I still have days where that I have to like remind myself that this is my life, and this is my daughter's death. That in no way, shape, or form, you know, tells anybody who she is. But that's why we share her story, because I think before losing our daughter, I am absolutely sure that I had an idea of the type of person I thought would take their life. And it was nothing like my daughter. And, I tell people, like, Isa is the face of suicide. And there are so many faces just like hers. It's not, you know, the
It's
the
not a copy
criminal
paste type of
that,
person, yeah.
right. It's not the, the person who wears all black and, you know what I mean? Like, is
Yeah.
really quiet sitting in the back of the
Absolutely.
room. It's not the kid over there, like torturing animals. Like, it's anyone. It can be anyone. It can be,
And that's what you talk about. You go.
yeah.
So you started. How soon after her death did you start her foundation?
So my younger brother actually came to us, I think within the first couple weeks, and said, I would really like to start a foundation for Isa. And he goes, I don't know what it's going to do. It doesn't even matter. He goes, I want to start it. And we said, okay. I remember saying, like, I would really like it to have her name in it, like, because I love saying her name. And I'm amazed that I knew somewhere in my deep in my psyche that I would so appreciate being that how much I could keep saying her name. So it is the Isa Kranz Foundation, and we had no idea what we were going to do. All I know is in that life celebration that we had hosted for us, there was roughly $50,000 raised in that time. People gave cash and gave checks, and I had no idea like why and what we were going to do. But all I know is I said we have to do something important with this money. And we took that and we, started an account for the foundation. And we just knew we had to do something special. And that would help us carry Isa forward with us in some way. And again, I'm so grateful to so many people and so grateful for the ideas and the thoughts. And just the well wishes people have given us, because that foundation has been a huge healing piece for us to be able to do things in Isa's name and in her honor. And it basically started off helping people because Isa was a helper. She was the kind of person that you could go to and that kids did go to when they were having a hard time.
Didn't you say something about like her when she was cheerleading?
Yeah,
with
that's
the
one of my
shoes or
favorite
something?
stories. Yeah.
Yeah. You want to share
She
it?
gets so embarrassed. I can literally like feel her right now being like, Mom, please
Don't say this on air.
Seriously. And I share it like all the time because it was just so cute. Like she, was on the cheer team, and I believe this was after she had, gotten in trouble and had gotten asked to leave the cheer team and then came back. And so her girlfriend, the girl she knew the best, was not interested in going back on the cheer team. So Isa didn't really have any close friends on the cheer team. But she wanted to keep going. She really loved it and she wanted to keep going. So she shows up for cheerleading one day, and the flyer in her group did not have her shoes. She had forgotten her cheer shoes. And that's one rule is, in order to cheer, the flyer has to have her shoes. So Isa took her shoes off and gave them to the flyer. And shortly thereafter, one of the coaches brought it to the attention of the whole team, stopped the practice and said, Isa forgot her shoes, kind of made a big deal about it, how important it is to remember your shoes. And Isa didn't say anything, and neither did anyone on her team.
Oh my gosh.
And somewhere along the lines in the practice, by the end of the practice, the coach stopped practice and everyone was sitting down, and he did somehow find out that and apologize in front of the whole team to Isa and said, hey, I realized those were not your shoes, that you did not forget your shoes.
Yes.
And thank you for that. And Isa said, everyone clapped, and she just came out of there so embarrassed, and like her face was all red, and she was just like, it was so not a big deal. Like, I don't know why they made it such a big deal, but it was such a sweet story that, you know what I mean? She did.
Well, that she did
Yeah.
it, but she didn't need to
Right.
even though she got blamed, she didn't need to. That's not why she did it. She wasn't looking for
Yeah.
positive
Credit,
or anything, and then she got negative and didn't even,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
need to justify that either. It was done for the right
incredible.
reason.
Yeah. She was always looking out for people and including people. This is another cute story at our barn where, like I said, we have mothers and daughters that ride. One of the mothers had adopted a young girl from Asia. I'm so sorry. I can't remember if it was
Where in Asia, you mean?
yeah, exactly. But anyway, this young girl came, and I think she was like maybe 9 years old, did not know any English. And the mom brought her to the barn the first time, and I think she was, kind of nervous because how was she going to communicate, with the other kids? And it was really, such a cool, you know what I mean? Like such a cool thing to, oh my gosh, this young girl is here from another country. And we introduced Isa to her, and Isa goes, "Come on, let's go play." And off they went. And like the mom started crying, and she was so grateful. She was like, "That is amazing." She's like, "I was so afraid, that
And how old
the
was
kids
he?
would be kind of scared or nervous." And yeah, I think Isa was probably around 9.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just said, "Come on."
No, you know what? Maybe they were like 9, 10, 11. Maybe they were 10 and 11, something like that. Yeah, off they went. And
She didn't care English, no English.
Oh, yeah.
Come on, let's play.
Exactly.
You're a kid, I'm a kid.
yeah, come on, we're
You're a
going.
kid, I'm a kid.
Yeah.
That much I know.
Yeah, it was really cool too because then years later, Isa's horse and this young girl's horse actually were related. I think they were cousins.
what?
Wow, that's crazy.
Isn't that cool?
gosh.
They got them at different times, and it just so happened, yeah, that they had, I think, like the same grandfather or something. But
Let's talk
yeah.
about the Isa Kranz Foundation. What
Mhm.
I know you said you didn't know what it was going to become,
Yeah.
but what has it become?
Yeah.
Where is
So-
it at?
yeah, so fast forward in those beginning, months, I just remember, we helped a local family in town. They had just purchased a restaurant. They had put all their life savings into this restaurant to buy it, and the father was diagnosed with a brain tumor. So somebody had started a fundraiser, and just to kind of help the family through. And I'm so excited to report that this man, is recovered, and the restaurant is fabulous. But that was our first check.
Okay.
It was one of
Okay.
Henry's classmates' fathers that had the surgery, and everything was successful. But that was our very, very first check that we ever wrote out. And like, it was just so powerful. And I just remember, I think it was Jimmy that like ran in there. I said, just go in there and hand it to someone and then come out. And it was like, here you go. And then like, we just ran, but it was like, that felt amazing. Like that, you know what I mean?
The check
Yes.
was from the
It
Isa
wasn't right.
Kranz
It wasn't
Foundation.
our money.
Yeah.
This is Isa Kranz Foundation money, and
Yeah.
that felt really cool to be able to do that. So the next event that we had was what would have been Isa's 16th birthday, and I remember saying to my aunt, "What are we gonna do?" Like, I was so excited for Isa to be 16. She was learning how to drive already. My father had actually even given her a car. So she, even at 15 years old, when she was starting to drive, like, she had her own car. And I was just like, what are we going to do for her 16th birthday? And my aunt said, we're going to do random acts of kindness. Like, let's just go out and do that. So I took that idea and ran with it. I rented a big white 15-passenger van. We decorated it with signs that said, "We love you, Isa, Random Act of Kindness Day," all sorts of different things. I had my friends and some family had little kids. We had them like draw pictures. We went out in this van, and we put these like cute little picture drawings on people's windshields. And we went to, like the local Walmart, and we were filling wish lists for animal shelters, for my mom's favorite Turning Point, like a domestic violence shelter. We did the Buddhist temple in Woodstock. My sister-in-law had a yoga studio, and so we had a connection with this Buddhist temple. One of the people from the Buddhist temple had come out and kind of given us just a little blessing after Isa had passed away. And he was actually the one that said, you know, if you do good things in your daughter's honor, it actually boosts her karma even in heaven. And how cool
That's
that
nice.
was, yeah, to hear that. And I think that kind of really encouraged us to kind of carry on these things in Isa's honor. So we went to Walmart. We filled probably, 6, 7 shopping carts filled with all these wish list items from, kitty litter and dog toys and food to, cleaning supplies and, all these different things for all these places. And then as we were doing this, my husband and my father were going down the line and purchasing people's groceries and paying for their
Oh
orders.
my
And,
gosh, this is so
giving them a little
beautiful.
card that said, you have been inked, which of course is Isa's initials. And it said our daughter would have been turning 16 today, and we lost her to depression. Please accept this this random act of kindness and please pass it on. Do something kind, for someone else. So,
Were people surprised?
oh my gosh, like people were like emotional, people were shocked, they were like so grateful. It was, I could not believe how powerful it was, like for us. But even like the store manager came down and was like, what are you guys doing? And he was like, this is amazing. Thanks for coming to our store. Like, it was just so cool. And like how it kind of got contagious. And I had started a Facebook page for the foundation. And, on the Facebook page, like people would report and be like, oh my gosh, like, I didn't see you guys in the store, but somebody did a random a random act of kindness and gave me this card and I found you on Facebook. And that was a huge, really, really important day. We even went into the stores and I had like our little niece and nephews and friends' kids scatter pennies like on the floor in a couple different aisles because there's this pennies from heaven idea that when you find a penny, it's actually someone from heaven saying hello or
That's cute.
sending their love. So just
I love it.
yeah, cute different things like that. We've kind of morphed into really supporting other organizations that support people's mental health and physical health as well because they go hand in hand. Physical health and mental health are both so important and they're so similar. I think it's so unfortunate.
One and the same, yeah.
Yeah, that mental health has such a negative perception when you talk about it, where everyone has mental health. Well, we do presentations at schools just this past week. I asked the kids in middle school, what is mental health? What is mental illness? Like, is mental health just the, lack of or the absence of mental illness? Like, and one little person said, like, everyone has mental health. You know what I mean? You can have, just like everyone has physical health, like you can be sick or you can be healthy or anything in between. And it's the same thing with mental health. And how incredible these generations growing up now are so much more comfortable talking about it and understanding it and voluntarily saying, I'm in therapy. I've been in therapy for years. Like, I'm so encouraged and I'm so excited at the perception that is changing, that stigma surrounding mental illness, surrounding different disorders is lessening. I can see it and I can
Yes.
feel it.
And you mentioned that sometimes students even leave your presentations that you're giving at the school to go tell an adult that
Yeah.
they're worried about their friend.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great point because Isa's friends shared with us after she died that Isa had talked to them about it, that they had, talked to each other. And I, of course, understand why they didn't tell an adult because I had gone through a similar thing in my childhood. And in high school, my best friend was suicidal and very seriously. considering taking her life, and I was so afraid that if anyone found out, if an adult found out, if her parents found out, that they may send her away and I would never see her again, or that she would get in trouble. So when Isa's friends told me that they knew that she was considering taking her life and they didn't tell, I wasn't angry, but it really inspired me and my husband both to go to the schools and talk to kids about how important it is to tell an adult, and that you are being a good friend by telling someone and helping your friend get help. Because it is one of the hardest things about having a mental health issue and struggling, especially with thoughts of suicide, is the idea that, how difficult it is for that person to ask for help.
Yeah.
So you may have to be that person's voice for them and say, I'm worried about so and so. I'm concerned about this friend, or I'm concerned about, we've, in the years since Isa has passed, we have come across many, many kids that have contacted us, but also parents who've been worried about their own children, and actually even kids who've been worried about their parents.
Oh boy.
Amazingly enough. And what do we do, and who can we go to? And so, like, one of our biggest messages is, a professional. So whether you're a child or an adult, but especially if you're a kid and someone is confiding in you that they are struggling, or if you are struggling yourself with these thoughts, that as soon as possible, to get professional help. You can go to an adult, you can go to a teacher, you can go to a school counselor, you can go to your own parents, you can go to a friend's parents, you can go to a policeman, fireman, doctor. There are all these, and we have the kids kind of in these presentations come up with who could you
Who
go
would they
to?
go to?
Right.
Yes.
Who would you feel comfortable enough confiding in? Because we do not expect you to be able to handle a situation like this. It's difficult enough for an adult, to handle this situation. You don't have the resources. You don't have the life experience. You don't know who to contact next and what the next steps are. That I do believe that, lives can be saved by, sharing with an adult that, you or someone is struggling, and then getting that person help. Now, of course, when you look at Isa's situation, I mean, she was getting help. She had, medication. She had psychiatrists. She had therapists. And the way I see that is that mental illness can be like cancer, and that sometimes you can have cancer and get it treated and go into remission, or be, even be cured, quote unquote. And sometimes you can go through treatment and you can still die.
One little cell can escape, same as depression. One little remnant that's left.
Yeah. And they just, I don't think doctors or researchers really know exactly why one person will become suicidal and complete suicide, and why another person who maybe has a very similar history, maybe similar stressors, similar story to that person, will not become suicidal. If there's genetic factors, environmental factors, if, like I like to call it, that perfect storm, everything just has to align, like what exactly it is that, causes someone to get to that point and then to take their lives.
So a few more things before we wrap up. You did say something about interrupted sleep is a common factor in taking one's life.
We have just found, and again, my husband and I, we're not professionals, but we do help facilitate the support groups for people who've lost someone to suicide, and whether it be a child or a parent or a sibling or a spouse. We have talked to a lot of people over the last, I think, 8 years we've been facilitating, and how really shocking it was to hear how many people had struggled with sleep deprivation.
Wow.
And that, I know from researching myself that lack of sleep can severely affect your mind and your thought processes, and, really everything.
I mean, they use that for torture.
Yeah,
Sleep
exactly.
So what does that tell you?
Right. So it's
And then also you mentioned that the word committed suicide, the phrase committed suicide, is something that you have encouraged others not to put it that way because it's
Yeah.
not a crime.
right. That word committed really insinuates a crime or even a sin.
Yeah.
And suicide is neither. That was something really early on that I didn't know why that word really grated on me, and it doesn't with everyone. Some people are who have lost someone to suicide are very comfortable using that, but for me, and for a lot of people that I know, to use more appropriate and compassionate language would be someone died by suicide, or someone took their own life, or someone completed suicide. Those would be using more appropriate and compassionate language to describe that.
And you got WGN, you think.
Yeah, I
To
actually wrote an
stop.
email. I've done it a couple of times, like to different places, but WGN is my favorite news station. And I did contact them years ago. I just sent an email and it said, as somebody who's lost someone to suicide, I just want to raise awareness that, the phrase committed suicide can be very harsh and very insensitive to some of us, and that these are more modern day, more appropriate, more compassionate language to use, died by suicide or completed. And I'm telling you, I don't know how long it took, but at some point in time after that email was sent, I have noticed that they don't ever say committed suicide anymore,
I love
which
that.
makes I'm so grateful, and I'm just so thankful for people for being open-minded and for being like, hey, you know what? Like, instead of saying like, stop being so sensitive,
Like, you crazy
or
woman,
yeah,
you. Yeah.
exactly, like being like, hey, you know what? Like, you've lost someone to suicide. Like, yeah, we can try to be a little bit more compassionate, like,
Died by
for
suicide.
everyone,
Yeah.
because so many people have been touched by suicide loss. And I was saying this earlier that once you have experienced this, as soon as you say something or share a story, how amazing it is that people start coming out of the woodwork and sharing their losses.
It happened right before this
Yeah,
episode.
exactly.
Somebody here, oh,
Somebody
my aunt,
says-
da, so.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
that's why
really
we
amazing.
do this podcast too.
Yeah.
It's just because we think not just suicide, but other issues
Yeah.
too, other mental health issues. If we can talk about it and can get more people to talk about it, those more people can get more and more people to
Yeah.
talk about it, and so on and so forth. And then it just becomes more of an open communication in general, where
Yeah.
people maybe have a chance of being healthier
Yeah.
down the road.
And just more aware. Like, I have found, and I've always been a pretty open-minded person, I think, but in the last 10 years, I'm like, I want to learn. I have a friend who said, when I, talk a little bit on social media about that phrase committed suicide, and she said, you know what, my son has hearing difficulties, and she said, so when people joke about, what are you, deaf, or blah, something like along those lines, she's like, it's very hurtful, it's very insensitive to us. And I was like, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Like, it never dawned on me. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I'm so aware. I try to be aware. So many issues nowadays like that come about with the whole transgender awareness. I feel like there's a huge raising of awareness with that, and how incredible it is how many people are so open and willing and excited to learn the correct wording and the correct phrases and the correct
Words.
pronouns. Like,
Yeah.
I love that.
They matter. Words
Yeah.
matter.
For sure.
I think a great way to wrap up this episode, I could talk forever, but we're probably going to run
I
out of
can
battery.
too.
Yeah, I'm a
But-
little worried about that phone, actually.
exactly.
So we should wrap it up soon.
Yeah.
I just let's leave this episode with you explaining what the Scholarship for Kindness is.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. I was thinking about that in my mind too.
Yeah.
So, this is one of the things that I am the most proud of with our foundation. It came about right around the time Isa's classmates were graduating from high school. And we knew we wanted to do something to honor these kids that had all been through a lot. I mean, Isa's best friends, her closest friends, but also her classmates had been through a huge loss. And we wanted a way to just kind of honor these kids that had been through a lot. So it came about, of course, with Isa's legacy of kindness, that she was such a kind soul. I always tell people she was wild, she was hilarious, but man, she was so kind
Yeah.
to animals, to people. So this kindness scholarship came about in the way that we award this scholarship, and the only prerequisite is kindness. You don't have to have certain grades. You don't have to be an athlete. You don't have to be involved in a lot of other extracurricular activities. Basically, we ask anyone in the school, any student of any age, if you have experienced an act of kindness from a senior, a graduating senior, you can submit an application or a nomination, we call it. And we collect all these nominations from these kids, and we have a panel of judges that sit down and one night kind of talk about all the different submissions, and they discuss who they think is should be the winner, and then we award that usually on the senior awards night. It is such an incredible feeling to be able to give. Right now, we're at Richmond Burton Community High School, where my kids went to school. We honor 2 kids out of the senior class, and they each get $1,500 scholarship to use however they want. They do not have to be going to college. They can use it literally for anything that they would like or anything that they need. And this year's our first year. We have expanded to include Johnsburg High School as well. So a school in the town over. We are awarding one student in their senior class a $1,500 scholarship, and then also the person who nominates them does get a $150
Nice.
award as well
That's a
for,
great
for their work.
incentive. Yeah, because they have to
Yeah.
write it out
Yeah,
and
it's
fill
really
out the
cool.
application.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh gosh,
Yeah.
Tina, thank you so much for letting us know Isa.
Thank you
Thank
guys
you,
so
Isa,
much.
for your
Yeah.
mom, and thank you for being here, Isa. I know I can
Yeah.
just feel her.
Yeah.
What a sweet
Absolutely.
spirit.
Yeah.
What
And
a
I get
sweet-
little signs from her all the time too that I know some people don't believe in those, but I choose, to see those as little signs from Isa that she's okay.
She's
And I know she's with my mom, and
Yep.
Yeah.
And just she's okay. Katie and I talk about what we imagine heaven like, and it's just so beautiful.
yeah.
And it's almost like Isa's soul and spirit was almost too beautiful
Yeah.
for some of the ugliness on earth, but in heaven,
Yeah.
and now look at what she's doing on earth,
Yeah.
circling and getting all these people to have
Yeah.
a little piece of heaven while they're here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that
You've
so
been
much.
inked.
So actually, our we have our bracelets, and it says isakranzfoundation.com. That's our website, and the bracelets actually say inked on them.
Oh, that's cute.
So yeah, and they're rainbow because Isa loved unicorns and loved rainbows. So our logo is actually a little unicorn that she drew in one of her school notebooks, and we put a little rainbow in there with it. I actually have a tattoo in my arm of it as well.
Oh, nice.
Which I think she would be so embarrassed. Like, Mom, I drew that in my school notebook. Why? Why is that the logo? When we have our annual 5K, is coming up in June this year. We everybody gets a T-shirt for signing up, and it's a huge unicorn logo with the rainbow.
It's very Isa. I love it.
It's so Isa. Thank you guys so much for
Yeah.
having me and letting me
Thank you for
share
sharing.
my story.
Thank you. And thank you, listeners and viewers. And my goodness, if you don't have a box of Kleenex by now, what's wrong with you? We don't cry because of our makeup.
Speak for yourself. I was definitely welling
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, me too. All right. Till next time. Thanks, everyone. And thank you again, Tina.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you for coming in. We do appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Dun, dun,
And
dun,
that's a wrap.
lu- lu- lu-
Okay, I gotta check that phone. It's gonna be